Welcome back. Transitioning a child from a crib to a bed can be challenging, and it can impact the quality of sleep your child gets. So for this afternoon, Tara Hess from Tulsa Pediatric Sleep Consulting is here to advise parents on not just when is that right time to make the big transition, but maybe some tips and tricks on how to do it in a successful way.
Yeah. Well, I'd say there's a couple things you definitely want to think about before you make the transition.
Okay.
And the number one thing is their age. That makes the hugest difference. So my preferred age to make the transition is age 3. Sometimes like 2.5-year-olds will do okay, but definitely not under 2.5. Really, they just really lack the cognitive ability to understand what it means to stay in bed all night, and especially the impulse control to actually do that. So a lot of times when you move like a newer 2-year-old or maybe younger than 2, parents will have a lot of problems with them getting up or not staying in bed at bedtime. Again, because they just don't really understand what all night is, first of all, and then that impulse control is lacking. So if you can wait till 3, that's best.
I think what scares me is the thought of a toddler walking around the house when we're all asleep. And like, whoa, what are you gonna be doing?
So I do recommend gating the door like during that transition, because you're right, it is kind of like a safety issue. Like your kid could be up at 3 a.m. in the kitchen for all you know, so you do want to make sure that they're safe. And then the other thing you want to think about is not just their age, but how well are they sleeping in the crib? Like if they're sleeping really well in the crib and they're old enough, that's going to be the best time to transition. But if they're already not sleeping well in the crib, that's not going to be a good time to transition. You'd be surprised how many parents I have that are like, well, I thought he was uncomfortable in his crib, or he needed more room or something, and then they make that switch and it's just a nightmare. So,
and the child was not quite ready for it. Speaking of ages, is there an age that the child should be transitioned by?
I would say no, and not necessarily an age, but there is usually height limits on most cribs, so every parent needs to read their own crib manual, because some cribs are much deeper than others, so you have to see what your crib manual says. If your child's too tall, then you need to go ahead and transition them out, but I wouldn't say it goes by age necessarily. I like to keep them in there as long as possible. Like my youngest was almost 4 by the time we took him out, so and it went great.
I don't want to rock the boat just yet with our toddler. Now what about crawling out of the crib? I have some friends that their toddlers have already started this, but ours hasn't. So is that also a turning point? Like once they start trying to crawl out of the crib, is that time to go? I
mean, sometimes, but it definitely doesn't mean like they're ready to be out of the crib. So I like to start with some very basic things to see if we can safely like contain them in the crib if possible, if they're, like I said, not old enough, not around the age of 3 to move out. So we'll try to like remove anything that's in the crib that they might be using as a launching pad to get out of the crib, like pillows, blankets, anything like that. If there's a taller side to the crib, which is usually the back, we'll flip that around to make it the front of the crib and put it in a corner so they can't like climb out as easily. And even putting them in a sleep sack sometimes will hinder them being able to hike that leg over to get out. So we want to like not jump to the conclusion like we need to go straight to a bed, but if they can still get out, you know, when you've done all those things, then you need to go ahead and transition.
And just a few seconds left, but when you do make the transition, is there like make it big and special about going to a big
you could have a little party, like big girl bed party, and invite grandparents and have balloons and make it a big deal, and you could definitely do something like that.
Make it exciting. Well, thank you so much for coming today. We appreciate it. We'll hopefully see you next month.
Okay, thanks.